Very significant housing legislation announced by the province this week that would shake up how our city can be developed. And there's a lot of reaction pouring in this week. We've done our best to bring on the Home Builders Association, community associations, people who study this for a living. And I've heard from a lot of you. The legislation is called More Homes Built Faster. The aim is to try and get more affordable housing because, after all, we do have a housing crisis in Ontario. The legislation, More Homes Built Faster, will reduce or eliminate the fees municipalities can collect from developers. It calls for an end to single-family home zoning. So as part of this is the big thing, the province will allow triplexes on most residential properties. That's a big thing. And there's some apprehension about that, which we've heard on this show. People saying they're worried about the number of cars that might come into their neighborhood. If suddenly you have a house that's built behind you and now it's a triplex, now there's 3 dwellings instead of 1. How many cars are there going to be? Are they going to be on the street? Will the infrastructure accommodate that? And people have also expressed some concern about the changing character or aesthetic of existing neighborhoods. This means if you wanted to add 2 apartments to your home or to construct 3 separate units, you wouldn't have to apply for a zoning change. So let's talk about this on the show. I've got 2 guests joining me now. Riley Brockington, River Ward Councillor and member of the Planning Committee. He's also on the board of the Association of Municipalities of Ontario. Hello, Councillor. Welcome back.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Kristy, for having me on. Thank you.
Dean Tester is also on the line, advocate with the group Make Housing Affordable. Good afternoon, Dean.
Hi, Kristy.
Dean, I'll start with you. What do you think about this?
Well, I got to say, as a housing advocate, I'm really happy about this bill. This is really a monumental step forward for housing policy in Ontario. You know, as you said, we have a housing crisis. We have a massive housing shortage. Ottawa, compared to the average G7 city right now, we're about 100,000 units short of where other cities are per capita. And that's why we have some of the highest house prices in the world right now. And, you know, this is something that needs an urgent solution. So this bill, it's going to encourage the building of missing middle housing, which basically doesn't exist in Ottawa. Think of anything in between a single family house and a tower. That stuff doesn't exist in our city. It's going to cut costs for those who build affordable housing and apartments and help people who are struggling get a roof over their head. It's going to streamline approvals, make more housing options available by right, and get rid of some of the political battles that we see. You know, building housing shouldn't be a bare-knuckle brawl between developers and community associations. We should have clear planning rules and get rid of this nonstop fight and let people build homes, because we need to build homes in our city.
Councillor Brockington. Oh, go ahead. Councillor Brockington, I'll let you jump in. First of all, just your impression on the legislation, what it's going to mean for Ottawa.
Well, thanks, Kristy. I think all parties who are engaged on the housing crisis are trying to row in the same direction. We are all trying to build more homes across our province and here in the city of Ottawa. And the provincial government is focused on that, and they do believe that the planning process across our province need changes. So there are a lot of changes that they're proposing through this legislation, which I think will be traveling through Queen's Park very, very fast. A lot of those, I think, will be good as far as making sure more homes are built in this province, but certainly people I don't think fully comprehend the types of changes that are coming to that process, let alone changes that existing neighborhoods might see. So more housing, more diversity of housing, increased supply are all very, very good and welcomed, but I'm trying to make sure that the public is aware of what's coming so those battles that Dean referenced won't continue when the new legislation is added.
Okay, and what neighborhoods in Ottawa in particular do you think might be impacted more than others, off the top of your head?
Well, neighborhoods that currently are R1 zoning, so that's the single-family home neighborhoods.
Right, suburbia.
They do need to evolve. They do need to welcome a diversity of dwelling types, housing types. but they need to be aware of what's coming. A triplex is, mild compared to a tower, a 6-story, 9-story, 12-story tower, as we have seen in other proposals. But it's just trying to get the messaging out and making sure that the average resident of our city understands what's coming. We, as a city, are trying to accommodate 400,000 new residents, net increase in our city over 30 years. That is going to be unfolding through the next couple of years with a zoning bylaw review. However, people need to understand what this means, and that's part of the challenge.
Well, I think about places like one community where I used to live, Dean and Alta Vista. That's all single-family homes there, or in Orleans.
Yeah, that's right. And you see these neighborhoods all over the city. But what's important to note is, if you think of Barrhaven, you think of Canada, you think of any new subdivision that's been built in the last, 10, 15 years, all of them are R3 or above, right? Like they're already zoned for, duplexes and triplexes and, 2 or 3-story buildings. So, this isn't new. This is not something that's going to destroy neighborhoods or ruin the character of neighborhoods. Most people in Ottawa live in neighborhoods like this. What this is going to do is make it easier for people to use the land they own to, instead of fitting in, every time a house is torn down, instead of building a McMansion, and, that's the way that you maximize that land use now. Instead, you could put 2 or 3 units on that parcel of land and build a proper community and help meet our housing needs for the city. This is the way that most cities in the world are built. If you go to Montreal, for example, a bigger city than Ottawa, a very beautiful city to visit and live in, there's no crisis of character in that city, but it's all missing middle housing.
But Dean, I hear you want affordable housing. People are applauding this. We want affordable housing. But does it take too much power away from the municipality? How is the city going to have input on this?
Well, what I would say is the city's had a long time to deal with this problem, and we haven't, right? And that's not a uniquely Ottawa problem. I mean, Toronto has the same problem. Vancouver has the same problem. Most cities in Ontario have the same problem, and it's because of the politics of it, right? If 20 people show up to oppose a building, it's very easy for a city councillor to side with them because the other voices aren't showing up. But if you go to any building in the city, you go to any rental building and you talk to the 60 people who live there and say, do you wish that your home was never built? Do you wish that someone had blocked the development of your building? Of course not. Of course, they're happy to have these homes. And so these people deserve a voice too, but they're not the types of people who show up to city meetings, right? Their voices are not captured by the current system, and it's a broken system. And that's why we're seeing these changes.
Councillor Brockington, I'll get your response to that.
I think there's a few other things we need to consider in addition to changes to R1 zoning, and that is when affordable housing, nonprofit housing, or housing built under inclusionary zoning, which all three are good, are to happen. There is a proposal by the provincial government to eliminate development charges, parkland fees, community benefit fees associated with that development. And why is that important for me to flag? Because now that's a financial download onto the city of Ottawa. So,
well, where does that money? Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. What sort of a financial position does that put us in?
I haven't seen the analysis yet. Obviously, there are costs to the city when the city wants to contribute to affordable housing builds or contribute to a nonprofit housing build, which is still good. But development charges that developers pay now help build or help contribute to the cost of growth. And if that's going to be eliminated, that's a multi-million-dollar hit to City of Ottawa taxpayers. So in one hand, facilitating affordable housing growth, not-for-profit housing growth, inclusionary zoning is good. Fully support that, going in the right direction. But we have to understand the consequences that if the provincial government is going to make it, is going to waive the DC fees or parkland fees, community benefit fees associated with these developments, that is a download, and municipalities across this province are going to have to cover that financially.
Right. Okay. What do you think about that, Dean?
Well, Riley, my opinion on this is simple. These development charges, they're a tax, and they're not a tax on developers. There's no world in which developers say, well, guess we'll just make less money. Developers are passing on those costs, and it's a tax. It's a tax on renters. It's a tax on people who need affordable housing the most. So, if the city has a shortfall in infrastructure funding, why are we taxing the people who most desperately need housing, the people who need a roof over their head? That doesn't make sense to me. So to me, this change makes a lot of sense. Development charges on single-family homes, development charges on new towers, that's fine. But, on affordable housing, why are we putting a tax on affordable housing? I'm really glad to see this change. And I think this will actually contribute a lot towards getting more of this type of housing built.
Listening right now to Dean Tester, who's an advocate with the group Make Housing Affordable, and City Councillor Riley Brockington, who's recently been re-elected for River Ward. He's a member of the Planning Committee, and he's also with AMO, the Association of Municipalities of Ontario. I want to play for you both a clip of somebody who is concerned about this. I spoke with Haley Bennett yesterday, the president of the Katimavik Hazeldean Community Association. She's worried that residents are going to be silenced.
We do need to intensify. We're not opposed to intensification. It's possible that is a good step, but we were just concerned to see that if we're going to eliminate our chance for residents to have their voice be heard.
She was worried about parking. She was worried about not having input, and she was also talking about a building or a home recently in her community that was a bit controversial because people thought it was a bit of an eyesore. Councillor Brockington?
Well, people can always submit comments to the province directly and or their city councillor. My concern is I think this is going to be similar to Bill 3, the Strong Mayors Act, which got rammed through the legislature very fast. Provincial government, has this $1.5 million home objective over the decade and want to get this legislation passed as soon as possible. We heard yesterday at Planning Committee that we think the city submission will be provided within the week. So a very quick turnaround and the same type of timelines, I believe, at AMO. So members of the public, I think, are justifiably concerned at the speed of this legislation. I'm not opposed to the overall intent of the legislation, and I say that sincerely. I just think it's so large and impacts so much existing legislation that there should be some time to allow this to go through their standing committee, receive public delegations, and listen to the main players and actual residents who have input and then make final decisions here. So that's the concern. If you look at, the Heritage Act being amended, the Land Tribunal Act being amended, the Conservation Authorities Act being amended, the DCs that are being waived, people should have an opportunity to provide that input as well as other engaged associations and organizations. So we're all trying to row in the same direction. Simply allow people a little bit of time to provide that input.
Dean, I'm just about out of racetrack here, but final comment to you.
Yeah, thanks. So, in terms of community consultation, I think it's important. People need to be able to have a voice. Where this runs into problem is when we have people who simply cannot accept the decision of planning committee. They cannot accept the rules that are put in front of them, and we get frivolous appeals. A perfect example in your ward, Councillor, 1110 Fisher Avenue, approved by the city July 2020. Appeal was not heard until December 2021. It was dismissed a year and a half later, but labor costs went up, material costs went up, housing shortage got worse. Shovels still aren't in the ground, 60-plus units missing from our housing supply. It cost one person $400 to appeal this and cost the developer hundreds of thousands of dollars and deny housing to 60 people for another year and a half. That's frustrating. That's why I'm happy we're getting these changes.
Okay, Councillor Brockington, I will give you a chance to respond to that one.
Well, that's the process we have in place. There are appeal rights up until now, and the community has that opportunity to be heard by an adjudicator. But I agree with Dean that, with rising costs, labor, and construction materials, there's an impact there. But that's the process we have. People do have rights in this province, and they should be respected.
Thank you to both of you. I really appreciate hearing both perspectives on the show today. Dean, Councillor Brockington, appreciate it.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
River Ward Councillor Riley Brockington, Dean Tester, advocate with the group Make Housing Affordable.